Howdy, folks. Today we're looking at Batman 609 in Facsimile from 2002 in DC Comics. So now that we've established that Hush is an incredibly popular story that doesn't hang together all that well, we need to step back from that critical judgment to establish why precisely it is that Hush needed to happen, for the character and the company both. By the turn of the century, the Batman books have been shepherded for 15 years by one man, group editor Denny O'Neil. It must be said, few people in the history of the medium have ever understood a character quite so well as O'Neil understood Batman, and the stories that saw print during his return tenure rank as some of the most important of their era. From Dark Knight Returns through Nightfall and No Man's Land, the late 80s and 90s proved to be incalculably significant for Batman, and a lion's share of that success must fall on the shoulders of the editor who shaped that line into a powerhouse. But a decade and a half is an eternity in publishing. One era's steady hand at the rudder becomes another era's stagnation. The flagship Batman books needed a shaking up, and, as I've already alluded, the magic formula for shaking up DC has entailed, going back as far as the mid-1960s, poaching Marvel talent to make the books look more contemporary. O'Neil himself had been poached from Marvel in 1986, after all, after having spent 6 years directly under Jim Shooter. Bringing in Jim Lee to update the books was, in the parlance of the time, a pure no-brainer. But it wasn't a decision O'Neil was ever going to make. That was left to his successor, Bob Schreck, who succeeded O'Neil in 2000. So while it would be a mistake to say that Hush changed everything, it definitely changed the vibe. In point of fact, Lee didn't actually change all that much. His Batman sports a very classic look, and most of the classic rogues were also substantially unchanged. This issue spotlights one of Lee's more popular redesigns, giving the Huntress an exposed stomach that she'd carry over into Ed Benez and Gail Simone's Birds of Prey, which launched soon after Hush and became one of the first spin-off books to benefit from the refurbishment here. What was most radical up front was simply seeing all the old toys with a new coat of paint. The Joker was still the Joker, but now he looked more like the X-Men. As for the new kid, Thomas Elliot, well, it must be said, there was no confusion at all from the very beginning about who the new mystery villain was supposed to be, and my recollection is that fan discourse around the original run of the story was fixated on the idea that Elliot must in fact be a red herring, because it was so obvious from his very first panel that he was back in Bruce's life for sinister purposes.